Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Last night, brothers and sisters, it was a little late, but alhamdulillah, we had a fruitful and beneficial session by Allah's permission. We spoke on one of the styles of Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, which every Muslim layman, student, man, woman, and child should be familiar with. And that is the combination between the Quran and the Hadiths and the Quran. When you read a book of tafsir, explanation of the Quran, it is full with Hadiths. When you read a book of Hadiths, it is going to lead you to a better understanding, a better appreciation, a more thorough grasp of the Quran itself. So even though our talk and our lecture is supposed to be on prophetic narrations regarding unity, part 2, because we spoke on this last year, we began speaking on some of those verses from chapter number 3, Surah Ali Imran. And some of the problems that the Prophet ﷺ and his companions faced in Medina with regards to unity and disunity. Some of the challenges that they had and some of the things that they faced with regards to congregating and unifying, and with regards to being separated, being fragmented, and being split up. Very similar to many of our situations today. Very similar to our situation or our situations today. So that's what we spoke about last night. And we also attempted to shed some light on some of the key ingredients of establishing and strengthening Islamic unity. Establishing it, meaning that it isn't there, we have to build it. And once we build it, how to solidify it, how to bolster it, how to make sure that it's strong and that it's thriving and that it's flourishing and growing and maturing and protecting it from decay and from decline. Maintaining the Islamic brotherhood as well. So that's what we spoke on last night. We said that there are several main points and there are several side points. From the main points we mentioned, first and foremost is al-imanu billahi ta'ala, is to have iman in Allah and what that includes and what that necessitates. And that if you are a believer, if you're a Muslim, then there's a certain responsibility that you have with regards to establishing and with regards to strengthening Islamic unity. And we also mentioned another very important and key ingredient, which is good character. At-tamassuk bi makarim al-akhlaq, having good thoughts of your brother. Avoiding arguing and debating and bickering and squabbling if you can. Envy and jealousy. Forgiveness and pardon. And having a sound, clean heart. A hygienic heart. Even though it hurts you or it causes you pain or it's difficult to forgive your brother or your sister that wronged you, that said something about you or that conspired against you. But try your best to ask Allah to remove it from your heart. And this is one of the most important ingredients. Also is that of constructive conversation. Al-hiwaru al-banna, or al-hiwaru al-hadith al-banna. So let's sit down as Muslims and as non-Muslims as well, sitting with non-Muslims, and let's talk and let's discuss things, but with conditions. And those conditions is that our conversation, our discussion, our dialogue should be constructive and not destructive. We're not here to bash and to kill. We're here to build. And we're here to come out with a result that is beneficial for every single person. Something that is critical and not just talking and laughing and joking, as many conferences, meetings, and powwows are. It's just laughing, joking, playing games. But we need to leave with something tangible. This is what we discussed, this is what we talked about. We differ on these points, and this is why we differ. But we keep the Islamic etiquette of differing. We keep the Islamic etiquette of not seeing eye to eye on those things which is permissible for us to use our minds. As far as when it's clear and there's no room for difference of opinion, then that's a different story. And that's not what we're talking about. There's a difference between the two. And there's zealots on both sides of the fence. Right wing and left wing. There are extremists. Those who make every single issue or difference of opinion or lack of seeing eye to eye a means of disunity. That's wrong Islamically. And those who take the opposite extreme, there's no reason for us to differ. There's no reason for us to enjoin the good, forbid the evil, love and hate. No, we're all Muslim, we're all humans, we're all this, we're all that. It doesn't matter, and that's both wrong. Both of those are wrong. All right? and the importance of dialogue and discussion, and never underestimate the power of the word, the power of the tongue. The first thing that you do when you go to a doctor is what? You speak and you talk. The doctor talks to you, you talk to the doctor. Before he picks up an instrument, before this surgery, you see someone with regards to mental health, or a counselor or a therapist, the very first thing that they do is talk and speak. Your coach, the first thing that the coach does with and to the player is not run a drill or practice, but he talks. So talking and speaking is paramount to the human being. So if we can't even have a conversation with each other, we can't even discuss things in a mature manner, in a respectable manner, then the chances of us having any type of Islamic unity is slim to none. It's slim to none. If we can't even talk with each other, let alone if we can't respect each other when we differ, as long as it's in the boundaries of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. As long as it is in the boundaries of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. If you want to do something that's clearly against the teachings of the Sunnah, then there's nothing for me to talk to you about. But it doesn't mean that I cut you off and I boycott you from the rest of our relationship that is commanded by Allah and His Messenger. But there's nothing to talk about. You clearly wish to follow your desires. A clear-cut issue is nothing to discuss. As far as if there's boundaries for scholastic debate, for scholastic discussion, based off of common sense and intellect, then that's a different story. Moving forward, we also said enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. Its obligation, its importance, and its virtue. And one of the greatest virtues of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil is that it's the ultimate protection plan. It is the ultimate means of insurance. When Allah's punishment comes down, and when Allah's wrath comes down, those who enjoin the good and forbid the evil will be saved and delivered. Even though Allah's wrath will come down upon the people as a whole. But Allah knows those who were making peace before the fitna and before the adhab came down. So protecting yourself from Allah's wrath is oftentimes achieved by enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. Even if the people don't listen to you. Even if they don't take your word, they don't heed your advice, but you have cleared your slate. I gave them advice. I told them in the proper way, with the proofs, what the evidence is. I freed myself in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even after enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, they are still your Muslim brothers. They are still your Muslim brothers unless you feel otherwise. And we explained that last night, the danger of the hidden takfir. The danger of the hidden takfir. And when we say takfir, we don't mean the proper takfir, because takfir is from the deen of al-Islam. Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions this, the Prophet He mentions this. The reality of someone apostating. The reality of a person no longer being a Muslim. As some of the students and the disciples of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah, they wrote a book called Al-Kalimatun Nafi'ah fil Mukaffirat al-Waqi'ah. He wrote a book about the reality of a Muslim no longer being a Muslim. The reality of someone who says, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, violating and infringing that statement so badly that they've left the fold of Islam. Criticizing and repudiating those in 12th and 13th century Arabia who said, there's no such thing as takfir against a Muslim. That's not what the people of knowledge mean when they says, La nukaffiru ahadan min ahl al-qibla. We don't deem the people of the qibla to be kuffar for sins. For sins, drinking alcohol, domestic abuse, these types of sins. As far as if a person makes a statement of kufr akbar, or an act of kufr akbar, or belief of kufr akbar, or they have doubt about that which is kufr akbar to doubt about, then that's a different story. And we don't mix apples and oranges. They're two different things now. Two different things. So what we mean by the takfir is the improper takfir. Is deeming people not to be Muslims, but saying assalamu alaikum to them outwardly, or acting like they're Muslims outwardly. All right? Not only is this incorrect, but it's also very cowardly. It's a very cowardly act to do that. We say that you're Muslims, we don't make takfir, but deep down inside, you're really not a Muslim. And the proof that I don't consider you to be a Muslim is how I deal with you and how I treat you. No matter what name or title or label is placed on the bottle, if it's intoxicating in the inside, it's alcohol, it's khamr. No matter what name is given. So the importance of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, and how it is a major part of building Islamic unity. And not how the shaitan tricks people to think the opposite. If I enjoin the good and forbid the evil, no one will listen to me. If I say it's haram, this is wajib, you can't do this, ya akhi, you shouldn't do this, so on and so forth. is going to destroy the unity and break the unity. That's not true. Rather, it is a means of increasing and enhancing the unity because your brother knows that you now care for him. And you care for the greatest thing to care for someone for, and that is their soul. Not the wealth, not the blood, not the relationship, not the race. As the Prophet ﷺ, he said to his daughter, he said to his kinsfolk, his tribesmen, he says, Salini min mali ma shi'ti. He says, ask any wealth that you want from me. It doesn't matter. Take it. La ugni anki min Allahi shay'an. I can't help you out with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's nothing I can do for you in front of Allah. So worldly things, I will clearly, abulluha, he says, sa'asiruha. I'll keep the relations of kin. But other than that, there's no control that I have over that. So the greatest concern that you can have for someone is their soul. The greatest concern to have for your brother or your wife is not their food, their belly, their drink, their clothes, but is the state of their soul. So if your brother sees you doing something wrong, or he sees you not doing something that you should be doing, and he tells you in a proper manner, in a proper way, know for sure that your brother wants good for you. And if someone really cares about you and really wants good for you, that is a true way of strengthening and establishing Islamic brotherhood. And not, I see you doing wrong, but I don't say anything to you because I really don't care about you. That's being two-faced now. So it's oftentimes the opposite. But the shaitan, he tricks people. And he plays games on the son of Adam. As he played games and as he tried to trick our father Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. So oftentimes we think something is a means of being condemned. We think it's a negative, but in actuality it's a plus. And a similar issue to this is when someone asks you a question. You're a scholar or a student of knowledge or a learned person, and they ask you a question. And many people are listening to you and watching you. And you tell the people, you say, I don't know. La adri, Allahu alam. The average human being, he considers this to be a manqasa. Yani, look, he doesn't know. He didn't study this issue. He doesn't have the proper knowledge. He was stumped or stuttered by a question. He didn't answer the question. The scholars of Islam, they say that when someone says that I don't know and Allah knows, it is not a bad thing, but it's a good thing. And it's a virtue for the following reasons. Number one, it goes to show you is that when someone says this is the answer, the hadith is authentic, this is halal, then they're sure and they're well versed in that issue. Because the moment I say I don't know, that means that when I do speak decisively, I know that thing. If I say I don't know about this one, when I say, yeah, that's it right there, that proves that I know what I'm talking about. So in actuality, it's a praise for the learned person and not a dispraise for the learned person. Secondly, is that when you say you don't know, Allah knows best, you find the answer in a very short period of time. Because now you don't know, you go back to the books. You research, you study, and you discover it. But if you say you know, or you make up an answer, and you dance around saying that you don't know, in most cases you won't look for the answer. Thirdly, is that you gain respect and trust from your students. Is that he'll never tell us a lie. And he'll never tell us something that he's not sure about because he's fearing of Allah. And he says, I don't know. And it's a question that someone else can answer. Or it's an easy question, but he says he doesn't know. So in actuality, when you enjoin the good and forbid the evil, it is a means of strengthening Islamic unity. And is a means of establishing Islamic unity and then strengthening it, and not the opposite. But the shaitan, as we said, he plays games. And the greatest game that the shaitan can play with you is with your mind. It's to play with your mind and play with your thoughts. And to get you to see something that actually isn't there. And to get you to feel something, to think something that actually isn't there. To fuel your blurry vision. And that's what he did with Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. He didn't tell Adam to disobey Allah. He didn't tell Hawa to disobey Allah. You'll be kicked out of paradise. That's not what he said. That's not what he did. He played with them. And he played a game with them. And obviously we know what was the result in the end of that game. Tayyib, moving forward. Last but not least, or before the Tayyib, khairan inshallah, we have the concept of brotherhood, the virtue of Islamic brotherhood, the rights of Islamic brotherhood, looking after each other, protecting one another. Tayyib, if something happens to one Muslim, then it should be a strike against all of the Muslims. If there's an act of oppression against a Muslim sister, then every single Muslim sister should be offended. As we see non-Muslims today doing in the media. There's one hate crime, there's one racial slur, there's one inappropriate comment, one inappropriate tweet or email or someone, they say something on social media, and then it becomes a witch hunt. Everyone seeks that person, and everyone speaks out against it. And everyone says we won't tolerate any speech like this. As far as the Muslims today, then not only is a Muslim violated, his honor, his blood, his wealth, an entire country of Muslims may be violated, an entire continent, and no one will say anything. They won't do anything. No one will lose sleep, no one will be distressed, no one will be bothered by it. So what message does that send to the enemies of Islam? We just killed 1,000 Muslims, 500,000 Muslims, 1,000,000 Muslims, and no one raised their hair. What message does that send for the next time they wish to commit an atrocity against the Muslims? This is one of the most important parts of Islamic brotherhood, is that everyone's blood is sacred on an equal plane. Everybody. One Muslim is like every Muslim. One person's honor is like everyone's honor. One person being violated and disrespected is like all of the Muslims being violated and disrespected. If there's one Muslim who's hungry, then how can I enjoy food myself? As the Prophet ﷺ has instructed us with regards to eating the suhoor meal. And the virtue and the barakah of eating the suhoor meal is that it allows you to realize that there are other Muslims who are hungry and that you should feed them. Khairan, inshallah. Last but not least, we said the responsibility of Muslim rulers and Muslim leaders, the responsibility of the day-to-day Muslims, and the responsibilities of Islamic masjids and centers with regards to establishing and strengthening Islamic unity is that everyone has a responsibility. The leaders, the elders, the learned people, the influential people, the people involved in the politics and the governing of the communities. Change is to begin from them. If they are not unified themselves, you cannot expect the subjects to be unified and the average 9 to 5 Muslims to be unified. If you as the leader of a household, if you do not show Islamic unity, how can you expect your children to do the same? So this is something which has to be spoken on conferences, lectures, khutbahs, books, telelinks, etc. And very few things in Islam are done singularly in a solitary fashion. Very few things. Everything from the 5 pillars of Islam pertains to unity and congregation. Everything. From the Shahadatain all the way to Ramadan. All 5 pillars pertain to life as community and never life as an individual. When you say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, what does that mean? And why do you make that statement? Is it impossible to be a Muslim if you don't make your shahada? If you don't say it publicly and outwardly, can you not be a believer? Can you not pray and fast and do these things? But there's a wisdom in saying the shahada. There's a ruling in saying the shahada, and for the people to know it. As the Prophet ﷺ said, Umirtu an uqatil an-nas. He says, I've been commanded to fight the people until they make this shahada. And when they say it and when they do it, فَقَدْ عَصَمُوا مِنِّي دِمَاءَهُمْ وَأَمْوَالَهُمْ. He says, then their blood, their wealth is sacred. In other words, they have rights with regards to other Muslims. So being upon Tawheed and making the testimony of Islam is a concept of unity. You're a Muslim. I know that you're a Muslim. I have to give you your rights. He's a Muslim. We know that he's a Muslim. We have to give him his rights. And then 3 turns to 6 to 9 to 12. And then there's a community. The salah. What is the prayer based off of? Praying by yourself? No. Prayer is based off of community, leader, imam, rows, ranks. The more, the better. Everything about the salah is based off of togetherness. Zakah. That's obvious. Rich give to the poor, poor take from the rich. And that's based off of the seesaw of the community. Hajj, of course, that's based off of community. Everyone has to make Hajj at one time, one location, one single unified dress, one talbiyah, one act, etc. And obviously Ramadan as well. The Prophet ﷺ says, Sumu li ru'yatihi. He says, fast when you see it. And he never told one person to fast, one Muslim to fast. He says, Sumu, all of you fast. So Islam, from the beginning to the end, A to Z, is based off of community, jama'ah. It's based off of establishing it, and it's based off of strengthening it. So it's not a small footnote or side show. It's something that should be spoken on every week, every class, every lecture, in one aspect or another, in one dimension or another, one dimension or another. If you wish to talk about anything from the deen, one way or another, it is going to connect and relate to some type of unity, or some type of concept of Islamic unity. So that's the responsibility of the leaders of the Muslims, as we said. And that's also the responsibility of the common folk to uphold it as well. And that is the responsibility of the Islamic center, the masjid, whether it's a house or a masjid, a jami' built from the ground up. This is something that is supposed to be on the focal point, the forefront of dawah is how to live as community members, how to clean our communities, establish our communities, and fix some of our broken communities. Khairan, inshallah ta'ala. So that's with regards to the outline. Last but not least, we're going to read, inshallah ta'ala, perhaps a few hadiths with regards to unity, actual prophetic narrations. The first narration that we're going to read, inshallah ta'ala, is from the book of Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, and you can find it in Kitab al-Adab, the chapter of manners. The chapter of manners. And it's under the title heading, Babu Rahmat al-Nasi wal-Baha'im. He says, mercy to human beings and to animals. The virtue, the importance of being merciful to human beings and also to animals, any living creature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, and it's hadith number 611, or 6011, excuse me. He says, حدثنا أبو نعيم قال حدثنا زكريا عن عامر قال سمعته يقول سمعت النعمان بن بشير رضي الله تعالى عنهما يقول قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ترى المؤمنين في تراحمهم وتوادهم وتعاطفهم كمثل الجسد إذا اشتكى عضو تداعى له أو إذا اشتكى عضوا تداعى له سائر جسده بالسهر والحمى. Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he narrates with his isnad, his chain of narration, that goes back to the companion Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu anhuma. Him and his father were companions. Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu anhuma, he said that I heard the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam saying the following words. Listen carefully. I'm going to break down and dissect the hadith piece by piece. He says, Tara al-mu'minina fi tarahumihim. He says, first and foremost, Tara al-mu'minin. And we'll translate the hadith as one and then break it down. He says, Tara al-mu'minina fi tarahumihim. He says, you'll see the believers and their mutual mercy and their mutual love and affection and their mutual care and concern for each other like one body, one solid body. Whenever the body complains about an organ, a bone, a part, a digit, a limb, then the rest of the body is contacted. It's contacted. It's called upon. And they themselves all come to the state of suffering of this one part of the body with sleeplessness and with fever. With sleeplessness and fever. This hadith is considered to be, or before we even go that far, the Prophet ﷺ, first and foremost, he says, Tara. He didn't say, Mathalul mu'minina, the similitude of the believers, an example of the believers, but he says tara. He used the words tara, which means you see. You see. And this has several different interpretations. The first interpretation is when the Prophet ﷺ says tara, you see, that means is that it's something which is actual. In other words, this is how the believers are. And they're like this because you see it. When you see believers, you see my followers, you see them like this type of body. That's interpretation number one. Interpretation number two is that the Prophet ﷺ is basically saying you should see the believers. You should see the believers like this. Whenever you physically come in contact with them, this is what you should experience from them. And interpretation number three, which is similar to the first or to the second interpretation, is that the believers should be like this. The believers, they should be like this. So the first interpretation is that this is the character of the believers. This is how they are. No matter their level of knowledge, where they come from, their orientation, man, woman, etc. Whenever you see them, you're going to see them like this. And that means a lot. That means what? That means a lot. If I say to you that if you see someone from this place or this country, no doubt he's going to be like this. Whenever you experience someone from there, that's how he's going to dress. You don't even know who he is. You didn't see him. Trust me, he's going to be like that. If he came from this city or this town, that's how he dresses. That goes to show you that standard of dress is a major staple part of the fabric of that culture. Everyone understand this? In which everyone is unified. Everyone understand this? There is no some people dress like this from this city, others dress like that. No, everybody wears this type of footwear. Everybody. Whenever you see someone from this city, that's what he's going to have on his feet. And that, as we said, that means a great deal. Is that the believers understand this principle so much so, is that there's no discrimination with regards to it. And there are other things, kindness from the believers, generosity from the believers, hospitality from the believers. Some people, you may go to a masjid or a country or a town, and there's no hospitality at all, whatsoever. And there are others who may have a great deal of hospitality. The Muslims, they differ in this. They could differ. He's from the Middle East, he's from West Africa, he's from North Africa, they differ in these things. But this thing here, every single believer is supposed to be behaving like this, if he's a believer. And the first interpretation is going to be the strongest one. And secondly, is that you should see them like this. This is how it's supposed to be. It is presupposed that the believers are like one body. And last but not least, number 3, we said, is that it is a command, not for the onlooker, not for the one who sees the believers, but it's a command for the what? The believers themselves. As if the Prophet ﷺ said to the people, never be seen unless you're like this. Are we understanding the third interpretation? Do not be caught unless you're like this. The first 2 interpretations would be what? Addressed to the one who's actually looking. Are we understanding this? He says, you see the believers. As if the Prophet is speaking to someone who's looking at the believers. And the third interpretation will be a speech to the actual believers. Do not allow anyone to see you unless it's like this. Everyone understand this? These 3 interpretations of the first part of the hadith. Moving forward, he says, al-mu'mineen. And he doesn't say al-muslimin. He says the believers are not the Muslims. And we know that sometimes these words and these terms are interchangeable. They're interchangeable. Sometimes a believer means Muslim, and a Muslim means a believer, and sometimes they have separate meanings. They have separate meanings. The general rule, and Allah knows best, the general rule is that when the terms are mentioned together, then they have separate meanings. إِذَا اجْتَمَعَا افترقا وَإِذَا افترقا اجْتَمَعَا. Is that when they're mentioned in one sentence, they have different meanings. And if just one of the words or terms is mentioned, then it includes the other. So if Allah says the Muslims and the believers, it means that the believers are on a higher level than the Muslims. But if the hadith says, when the believer makes wudu, when my believing slave dies, when my believing servant is afflicted with such and such, then it also means the Muslim servant as well. But the general rule is that the mu'min is on a higher level, a higher plane of iman than the Muslim. So this, the Prophet tells us that you'll see, you should see, you can see, you will see al-mu'mineen, the believers, and what? How they do this, how they do that, how they walk, how they talk. No, and one thing he mentions here. He says, fi tarahumihim, and how they show each other mercy. Number 2, wa tawaddihim, and how they show each other affection and love. And number 3, he says, wa ta'atufihim, and how they make atf of each other, like a coat. You put a coat on your body, and there's layers of the coat. On your skin, there's a liner, so on and so forth. Atf is when you're overlapping on someone. They look after each other. He says that you'll find the believers in these 3 things. Number 1 is tarahum. It's not rahmah, but tarahum. Rahmah is one thing, to be merciful. But tarahum is which we trade mercy with each other. I look out for you, you look out for me. I take care of you, you take care of me. It hurts me, that which hurts you. Everyone understand this? And I search and I look for your well-being. That's not the same as me just having mercy. You come to me and says, I'm injured. I need money. I need to borrow something. I need a favor. And then I show you mercy. That's not the same as me searching and looking out to give you mercy. And another concept is that I may show you mercy, but you may not return the favor. You may not be as merciful to me when I'm in need. But now we're both merciful with each other. I can count on you, you can count on me. I'm going to look out for you, you're going to look out for me. That's a higher level. So the Prophet ﷺ says that the believers, when you see them, how you should see them, they must be seen in the following manner with regards to these 3 things: mutual mercy, mutual affection, and mutual well-being, or looking after each other's well-being and care, is something tangible and something palpable. It isn't something which is mystical, something which is mystifying, something which is mysterious and foreign and weird. It's something that every single listener can relate to. Every single person who hears this hadith can relate to. Whether your arm was amputated, you're missing your legs, whether you're attached to your twin, you have 2 faces, whatever your physical stature or condition is, if you're alive, then you have some type of body. You have some type of body, a frail body, a weak body, a strong body, a tall body, a short body. No matter what type of stature or physical status you have, if you're listening to the hadith, then there's some type of what? Some type of body that you have. So therefore, every single person can relate to this. There isn't a person who can't relate to this hadith, because right now you have your head on your hand, and that's your body. So when you hear this hadith, you think about how your hand is supporting your what? Your head. Your hand is warm, your head is warm, your hand is soft on the cheek of your face. It supports each other and is resting on your what? On your elbow. So you can automatically relate to what the Prophet ﷺ is saying. He says that the believers in these three aspects is like one body. Their similitude is like one body. And what is the case of this one body? What is the relation of this one body? What is the cohesive nature of this one body? Is that the body is all connected, which it is. That's not what the Prophet ﷺ says. Is that the body has to be in harmony. If you have this, the color of your skin on your hands is of this level or this shade, so your forearms should be the same. No. Something deeper than that and stronger than that and something more detrimental than that. And that is the internal sense of the body. And that is sickness and illness. When the body is injured, a bone is broken, a limb is broken, there's a wound, some type of piercing into the body, damage to tissue, he says then the entire body not only suffers, but he says tada'a. It's like dawa, as if it calls upon the rest of the body. Hey, look, I'm suffering, so I need you to help me out. I can't sleep, I can't rest, I'm swollen. So you guys have to experience some of that as well. He says this is the similitude of the believers, is that if one part aches or hurts, he says then the rest of the body will not enjoy sleep and will enjoy fever. And what can be worse than having a fever or being restless at night? One of the signs and the ways that someone is very sick is through fever. One of the signs that someone is about to die, they're on a deathbed, is severe fever. The first thing that you notice about your daughter or your son, your infant or your toddler is what? It's fever. You feel their forehead. Even before the use of a thermometer, you feel their forehead. It's too hot, something's wrong. Something isn't right in the inside of the body. When you get a migraine, you get a headache, or especially a migraine, the first thing that you experience is a burning sensation in the part of your head that's afflicted by the migraine. And that affects how you eat, that affects how you sleep, that affects every single sphere of life. But the migraine is one small, tiny vein on your temple. It's a few small places over your eyes, or right here, sinus, or the back of your neck, whatever type of headache or migraine you have. This one small vein, this one small piece of blood, this excess of pressure or air in your head causes your stomach to be nauseous and upset. And you become irritable, and you don't want to sit and light and talk and laugh and joke. And your whole sleeping, eating, drinking, your life with your wife, your husband, marital life is affected because of this one small thing in your body. And the same applies to when you break a bone. And the same applies to when you're wounded or cut or shot. And any other example that you can mention. So the body does not sit back and enjoy itself while one part of the body is aching and suffering. The Prophet ﷺ, he's trying to teach us something here. And he's trying to show us something here. And that is we have to be unified. And it has to be proof that we're unified. And it can't just be baseless speech. It can't just be talk. I love you for Allah's sake. You're my brother. You're my man. You're this, you're that. Nah, it can't be that. But it has to be tangibly proven. And the tangible proof is that if you're going through a hard time, then it means I'm going through a hard time. If you're going through a difficult trial or tribulation, then the same applies to me. I have to go to sleep. I have to go to work in the morning. I can't help you. Allahumma musta'an, and you hang up the phone. No. You're going through a crisis. So that means I'm talking to you at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, guiding you and giving you nasiha in that crisis. You have a financial difficulty and I have the money, I give it to you. You need some physical support or protection, I provide that if I can. You have a question. You have something that you wish to ask me about knowledge. It's a simple, easy question. A baby issue. If I know the answer, it's a big issue to you. And any other example of life, offering moral support to someone. And this is why the experts, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslims, they mention from the most important things for people that are injured and wounded is moral support. Moral support. The first thing to tell someone when they're trying to get off a substance, drugs or alcohol, is moral support. As we mentioned before about speech and talking. So this hadith, it teaches us many, many things. The first thing is that the Muslims and the believers are supposed to be like a body. And the body isn't equal in all of its parts. Some parts of the body are more vital than others. Some are more integral than others, just like the ummah of Islam. The leader is not like the follower. The follower is not like the leader. The learned is not like the one who isn't learned. The one who is a benefactor with his wealth or her wealth, who spends on Allah's cause, is not like the one who takes the wealth, and vice versa. But every single person has their role and their job, like the hand. And that's another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, "Al-mu'minu lil-mu'mini kal-bunyan, yashuddu ba'duhu ba'dan wa shabbaka bayna asabi'ihi." He says, the believer to the next is like a building, a solid brick wall, cinder blocks. He says, one part supports another. And he put his fingers together. When you break your thumb, or you sprain your thumb, or you jam your thumb, the rest of your fingers are all affected. And the thumb is the smallest finger on your hand. But it has a role with regards to the index finger, the middle finger, the ring finger, and the pinky finger, etc. And we can go on and on and on. So we understand that we have to understand our roles. Leaders are not to behave like followers. Followers are not to behave like leaders. The learned people are not to behave like ignorant people. And those who lack knowledge are not to imitate and copy and mimic those who actually have knowledge. Everyone plays their role and plays their part. And if we do so, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we can exist as a functioning body. And as soon as someone violates my brother or my sister, it's a personal offense to me. And the moment they say, it's not my business, it's none of my business, I'm sorry about that, I can't be there, I can't help out. The moment that we take that attitude, the body will suffer. And as we said before, you think that it doesn't affect you now. You think that it's just the foot, and I'm the heart or the shoulder or the head, so it's not my problem. But if you have a diseased or ill foot or broken foot, and you neglect it, it will lead to further deterioration in the body. And the same applies to Muslims. The same applies to Muslims. So if we take that attitude that it's not my business, it's not my concern, that's their problem, that's their mistake, that's their worry, know for sure it's going to lead to another health complication. Just like the doctor tells you. He says, well, how long did you have this injury? He said, I had it for 4 months. Why didn't you come to the doctor? Why didn't you come and see me? Well, you know, it wasn't a big thing. I took some aspirin and I walked on it. He says, well, now instead of your ankle, you have a problem with your instep. You have a problem with this bone in the leg. You have a problem, and then we have to have a bigger surgery and a more costly surgery, and there's even more time of you losing work. So oftentimes you think that you're getting away by looking out for yourself, when in actuality you're only harming yourself. Let alone that Islamic unity, establishing it, building it, is a responsibility, as we mentioned last night. It isn't an option. So in this hadith, we also learn, brothers and sisters, the permissibility of making examples. The permissibility of making an example and simplifying things for the people's minds to grasp. It is not haram to make an example of something. Some of the scholars of Islam, they even say that it's permissible to write a book of fiction, a storybook, whether it's for children or other than children, for the purpose of teaching wisdom and life experience, based off of the likes of these hadiths, in which the Prophet ﷺ is telling something that is an example and a similitude to lead to a greater point, a lesson and a moral. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by His beautiful names and perfect attributes to allow us to understand this hadith and to allow us to implement this hadith. And there are other narrations and versions of this hadith with regards to different parts of the body, suffering, and the wisdom of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, using these words with regards to sleeplessness and with regards to fever. Before I came in today, I was doing some more referencing and some more research on this hadith, and I came across a very interesting article proving that what the Prophet ﷺ said over 1400 years ago is in exact accordance with modern medical science to this day, with regards to the pain sensors in the body, pain sensors, and the nerve sensors in the body, and how when there is a great deal of trauma or shock or pain in one part of the body, it sends messages to the central nervous system. And the rest of the body is afflicted on one level or another. Just like the Prophet ﷺ said, without modern technology, modern research, and modern universities and schools, etc. We don't base our faith off of this. The Prophet ﷺ, he received direct revelation from the creator of the human being and of the human mind. But it's very interesting, and it strengthens us in faith when we read and come across these things. Just like the Prophet ﷺ, who never went to a formal school, said, one part of the body, and there's messages that are immediately sent to the other parts of the body, and they come to its help, and they also suffer on one level or another level, long term or short term. So let us, bid'Allah ta'ala, take this food for thought. It is He, the Most High, who surely knows what's correct and what's incorrect. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention and for your respect, for your listening. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wa sallallahu sallam wa barak ala